It's great to be here this morning. I want to thank you, all of you in the Long Island business community, for all that you do to make our counties here in Long Island such a vibrant part of the overall economy of our region. Right now, we are facing probably the most severe terror threat we've faced since September 11th. And each day that goes by and there's not an attack, I just hope that people don't fall into a false sense of security, because I can tell you, without going into all or really any of the details, the intelligence that was there for this attack, or could be even a coordinated series of attacks, was extremely credible. In fact, it was entirely credible. It was very specific as to the enormous nature of the attack they wanted to carry out. All that was not specific was exactly where it was going to occur. In fact, there's a concern that it could be anywhere. The embassies are closed in the Middle East, you saw that. But that doesn't mean it's focused entirely on the Middle East. The embassies were closed in the Middle East because we can't count on those local governments to provide security. And the last thing we want is to have embassies overrun. But it could just as easily occur in Western Europe, it could occur in the United States, or it could happen in all of the above. So this is a real threat. Let me just focus on that a bit, because and this is a criticism I have of the president. While a number of his policies against terrorism have been successful, and I give him credit for that, on the other hand, he's not sending a clear signal, because going back to last year's campaign, and then again in the major foreign policy speech he gave in May of this year, he basically said that Al-Qaeda is on the run, Al-Qaeda has been decimated, and we can go back to a pre-9/11 condition, where we have to look out for the occasional attack, but Al-Qaeda itself has been decimated as a force. And that's just not true. In many ways, Al-Qaeda is more dangerous now than it was before September 11th. And the problem, when the president says that, in effect, the war is over, or the war is almost over, or Al-Qaeda is on the run, or Al-Qaeda is decimated, and then we find out a few weeks later, or the American public finds out a few weeks later, that the NSA surveillance is more expansive than it ever was before. And, you know, what's the rationale for that? If the war is over, why do we have such NSA surveillance? Excuse me. And also, if the war is over, why are we now closing 22 embassies around the world? And why are we on a high alert? So, as I said, the fact is that Al-Qaeda is now more dangerous, I believe, than before 9/11. It is not capable, I don't believe, of carrying out an attack of the dimensions of 9/11. But having said that, it could still carry out attacks that could kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people. The reason for that is core Al-Qaeda has been hit very hard. But several years ago, going back 4 or 5 years ago, Al-Qaeda changed its strategy. So there's no longer one centralized base in in Afghanistan or Pakistan. Instead, it's now morphed into any number of other organizations. There's Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, based in Yemen. There's Boko Haram, based in Nigeria. There's Al-Shabaab, based in Somalia. There's Al-Qaeda in Iraq, based in Iraq. There's Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, in North Africa. And then there's also affiliates in Libya, in Morocco, and Algeria. These are all part of a conglomerate, if you will, of Al-Qaeda organizations. And what makes it more difficult is when it was just one centralized group, excuse me, coming down with something here, we knew who to focus on. We knew where the enemy was, we knew who the leaders were, and it was much easier to monitor. Now, we could have done a better job, we wouldn't have had September 11th. But in the immediate days, weeks, and months after 9/11, we knew where the enemy was, we were able to go after them. That is no longer the case. It's very difficult to know when and where the attacks are going to come from. So we had Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula carrying out the attacks, the plane that they attempted to bomb over Michigan on Christmas Day in 2009. Then there was the explosive cartridge put in a plane coming from Cairo to the United States, to Chicago back in 2010. Then there was a Times Square bombing. These come from different affiliates. And now you have, with growing unrest in countries like Egypt and threats against Jordan, these splinter groups, these offshoots, are so much more difficult to follow, and they're very lethal. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is focused on attacking the United States in particular, they, for instance, have hired scientists and doctors so they can implant body bombs into people to avoid detection going on planes. There's other types of, they feel, explosives that are non-detectable, that their scientists are working forward. And this is the constant threat we're up against every day. So when the president says that the war is behind us, it's wrong. And that's why we have to stay focused as a nation, why we have to work with allies, why we have to be on offense and not just respond when the attack comes. Now, people ask me, how did I feel about all the embassies being closed? Was it the right thing to do? Yes, at this point in time, it was the right thing to do because we allowed the situation to go that far. But I think if we are more on offense, if we stop talking about the war being over and instead of prosecuting the war, then we wouldn't be in this situation where we have to be shutting down all these embassies and we wouldn't be trying to play catch-up.